home he had created 20 years before awaited him. One might expect a degree of satisfaction, even anticipation. Instead, the man was all gloom and cigarettes. I had been married to him for long enough that I did not even consider addressing the conundrum then and there, but said merely, "Holmes, if you don't slow down on that tobacco, your lungs will turn to leather, and mine. Would you prefer the papers or the post?" I held out the newspaper, which I had already skimmed while we were waiting, and took the first item on the other stack, a picture postcard from Dr. Watson showing a village square in Portugal. To my surprise, Holmes reached past the proffered newspaper and snatched the pile of letters from my lap. Another oddity. In the normal course of events, Holmes was much attached to the daily news, several dailies, in fact, when he could get them. Over the previous months, he had found it so frustrating to be days, even weeks in arrears of current events, current English events, that is, that one day in northern India, when confronted with a 3-week-old Times, he had sworn in disgust and flung the thing onto the fire, declaring, "I scarcely leave England before the criminal classes swarm like cockroaches. I cannot bear to hear of their antics." Since then he had stuck to local papers and refused all offers of those from London, or, on the rare occasions he had succumbed to their siren call, he had perused the headlines with the tight-screwed features of a man palpating a wound, fearing the worst, but unable to keep his fingers from the injury. Frankly, I had been astonished back in Portsmouth when he hadn't ripped that day's Times out of Patrick's hand. Now, he dug his way into the post like a tunnelling badger, tossing out behind him the occasional remark and snippet of information. Trying to prize conversation out of Sherlock Holmes, when he had his teeth into a project, would be akin to tapping said preoccupied badger on the shoulder. So I took out my handkerchief and used it, and addressed myself first to the uninspiring view, then to the unread sections of the papers. Some minutes passed, then, "Mycroft has no news," my partner and husband grumbled, allowing the single sheet of his brother's ornate calligraphy to drift onto the upholstery beside him. "Is he well?" I asked. My only reply was the ripping open of the next envelope. On reflection, I decided that the letter would not say if its writer was well or not. True, Mycroft had been very ill the previous winter, but even if he were at death's door, the only reason he would mention the fact in a letter would be if some urgent piece of business made his impending demise a piece of information he thought we needed. Holmes read. I read. He dropped the next letter, a considerably thicker one, on top of Mycroft's, and said in a high and irritated voice, "Mrs. Hudson spends 3 pages lamenting that she will not be at home to greet us, 2 pages giving quite unnecessary details of her friend Mrs. Turner's illness that requires her to remain in Surrey, 2 more pages reassuring us that her young assistant, Lulu, is more than capable, and then in the final paragraph deigns to mention that one of my hives is going mad." Going mad? What does that mean? He gave an eloquent lift of the fingers to indicate that her information was as substantial as the air above, and returned to the post. Now, though, his interest sharpened. He studied the next envelope closely, then held it to his nose, drawing in a deep and appreciative breath. Some wives might have cast a suspicious eye at the fond expression that came over his features. I went back to my newspapers. The train rattled. Hot wind blew in the window. Voices rose and fell from the next compartment. But around us, the silence grew thick with the press of words unsaid and problems unfaced. The 2 surviving aeroplanes from the American World flight were still in Reykjavik, I noted, and a conference on German